AITA for telling my mom and sister to pay our bills if they agree my wife should be able to be a stay-at-home. My wife has recently started to express interest in being a SAHW to prep for being a SOM. We don't have kids and haven't been trying, and before getting married, we talked about kids and work, home arrangement, and we agreed that we'd both work prior to and once we had kids. And agreed we'd take turns with the stay-at-home portion for the first year or two after potential kids were born, then both back to work. Now she wants to do away with that and wants to be a stay-at-home wife until we have kids and then be a stay-at-home mom. I don't want that, I never wanted that, and I made that clear from the start when we got serious. I enjoy my job a lot, but my salary can't sustain a family, and I don't want to go back to school and change careers like she wants me to make it happen. I don't want to take up a second job either, knowing I'd still be doing half the housework and childcare. Whereas both my mom and her parents are local, she'd have plenty of help during the day and able to get downtime. We had dinner at my mother's a couple days ago with my sister and her kids. While we were there, my wife goes, "Your son's being mean, he won't let me be a stay-at-home mom." First, my family took this as she's pregnant and got excited, so I had to tell them that wasn't it. She just wants to be a stay-at-home. It turned into this 3-on-1 conversation about how I should let her stay home if that's what she really wants, and I should be taking care of her and finding a way to make this happen for her. Finally I go, "Would you two help her with the house whenever she needs it?" Of course, that's what family is for. Especially when you start having kids, we'll help. Cool. Keep that same energy and help me pay all our bills and every other expense to upkeep our current quality of life if you feel so strongly she should get to stay home. They did not like that and told me I was being overdramatic. My mom called me stubborn and told me to find corners to cut to afford everything on my salary and drop things like streaming services, some of my hobbies, go from 2 cars to 1, etc. We left and my wife wasn't too happy on the way home. She says I was out of line for saying that to my mom and sister, especially since she thinks I was serious. Was I the a-hole for telling my mom and sister to pay our bills if they wanted me to go along with it? I am mindful that a baby trap is always possible. For those of you insisting I reconsider, no, look, I'm glad the stay-at-home, one income works for you all and you enjoy it, but it's not for me. I'm well aware one income means being financially tight, but it's more than that. I don't want the stress of making sure I'm making enough on my own with 2 jobs. And also doing my part in the house and being a parent. I'd much rather get to spend time with my kids when I have them, not be a stranger that falls asleep at dinner and spends a bit of time like my father was. Since this post was more about my mom and sister, I'm going to tell them to lay off. Either they do, or I just drop contact with them, but I won't be giving them an ultimatum about it. My wife feels like a revenge affair is potentially a way to make up for me cheating 3+ years ago. I cheated on my wife 3+ years ago. We have been together 4 years this January. At the time she was my girlfriend and we had just started dating exclusively a few months beforehand. There wasn't anything wrong with the relationship. She treated me amazingly and I took her for granted. I was being completely selfish, lacking in integrity, short-sighted, and narcissistic. So this wasn't a case of both of us neglecting the relationship like many affairs. The cheating was as follows. I was calling a woman outside of our relationship multiple times a week. I eventually met up with this other woman multiple times over a month with physical contact, and I had sex with her once. Things were ended between us and no contact whatsoever has been made between this other woman and me since. I knew I had made a huge mistake and I followed that up with another mistake by not telling my future wife about it immediately. I never cheated on her again in any way since then either. My future wife suspected the affair and confronted me about it. I lied to her and told her a story she didn't completely believe, but she at least believed that no physical cheating had happened, only that I had met someone behind her back. I basically refused to talk about it after a certain point. We were together 2 more years, lived together, built a life together, and earlier this year we got married with me still keeping this secret. I should add that our relationship has not been great since that time either. Although we had some happy times together, I had a lot of growing up to do in terms of learning what it meant to be a good partner in a relationship and a good person in life. I never cheated on her again. However, I was a compulsive liar, a thief, and I was unable to empathize with anyone or respect personal boundaries. My family of origin reinforced this behavior for my entire life, and only by living with my wife, who is an amazing, kind, strong, an empathetic person, have I learned how much happier I am not living the way I was raised. This has drastically improved me as a person but caused her much pain and suffering, which I deeply regret. At a certain point, the example my wife and her family set hit a tipping point in me, and I could see all of my deeply ingrained and flawed assumptions and truths I had about the way the world worked, and my place in it. In the past 6 months I have made a huge effort to change myself for the better. I knew I was making my wife miserable and myself miserable by living without values or respect for myself, her, or others. I have gone to extensive individual counseling, and we did a lot of couples counseling. I've read many good books on relationships, and I have made consistent progress towards becoming the person I want to be and my relationship needs me to be to survive. Part of this growing up process was to tell my wife about cheating on her. I will admit I initially did it because of the guilt I was feeling about what I had done and kept a secret for so many years, and it was less about coming clean out of love for her. 4 months ago I told her what had happened, as well as a number of other disgusting things about my past I was keeping secret. This was devastating for our marriage, which was already on shaky ground. It was also devastating and extremely painful for my wife, who has stuck by me through all of the bad years we had together. I feel that I did the right thing telling her, and I would do it again, but I still struggle with all of the pain I have put her through and question whether I have just caused more pain. I feel horrible about the person I was, about the way I was treating my wife and the way I was conducting my life. I still don't know how I will ever be able to live with myself and my past and struggle with it daily. I've tried to channel this shame and guilt into becoming a better person and trying repair the life my wife had that I destroyed. Right now we are living together, married, and I am fulfilling all of her needs that she will allow me to, caring for her, cooking for her, spending every moment we can together, talking through painful thoughts, feelings when they come up, etc. I'm consistently making progress towards becoming a good partner for her, getting a well-paying job, connecting with her emotionally as much as possible, showing her I've grown up, completely changing my personality, life values, and the way I spend my time. This all may be too little too late. I know what happened eats at her day and night. She has withdrawn. She says she isn't in love with me anymore, and I don't blame her. She is still here trying to move past what happened, seeing the changes I've made, and trying to believe in them. I think she sees that I have the potential to be a good partner for her, but our past history, most of which was unhappy for her, is holding us back. Revealing such a huge breach of trust blows apart your life and shows all of the weak points, which we had many. I wanted to ask the Reddit community for their thoughts and advice on one in particular, my wife's thoughts about having an revenge affair. One of the feelings my wife has been struggling with is that if she stays in this relationship, she will always be the person who was wronged, who was treated badly. And that scale will never be balanced. Even if I treat her perfectly for the rest of our lives, there will always be this deficit that will never be made up and will mean that she was less. She will always be a martyr, and this will never be an equal relationship. She has been constantly telling me that she wants to have her own affair, that anyone besides me paying attention to her and showing her any affection or warmth would make her feel good. Whoever this other man was, they could make her feel better than I can right now, even though I have been showering her with love and affection and showing her how much I care. She says she sees how much I love her and all of the effort I have been putting in, but that none of this means anything to her, it doesn't connect with her anymore. She actually seems surprised that I would care at all if she slept with someone else. The sanctity of our marriage was already broken in her eyes. She has been trying to convince herself that having a revenge affair is a bad idea. She hasn't done it or even come close to doing it, but she has brought it up multiple times a week for the past month or more. She admits that cheating on me probably won't do anything good for our relationship, but it will definitely make her feel better. Like the scores are more even and she isn't such a martyr. At the same time she feels like by cheating on me she will be compromising her own values and morals and stooping to my level. And she doesn't believe that you should ever let anyone else change your values. That if she was going to cheat on me, she would be more true to herself by just leaving me and leaving the relationship. I feel like I understand where she is coming from with all of the above. It is obviously very painful, but I deserve it. I want to hear your thoughts on our situation and any experiences people have with similar situations where the cheater was just being a bad person and the betrayed did nothing wrong in the relationship. In particular, how this relates to a revenge affair, evening the scores, etc. Edit. Thanks for all of the responses and honesty. I really appreciate it. I feel something I should add is that there are times, even this last weekend, where she says she is willing to give us a chance to see if things improve. She doesn't want to cheat herself. I think her point is more that I have already cheated in the relationship. Why does it matter if anyone cheats at this point if it makes her feel better? Even writing this I realize what broken thinking this is. Throwaway as this might not make me very popular, even in pro-revenge. This all happened to me a few years ago. I told a friend the story of my divorce and I was told to share. Started a few years ago. I thought we were happy. We were your usual suburban professional couple. Financially secure, healthy, good sex life, 2 kids. I thought we had a healthy social life. We were going through one of your typical married couple rough patches. Both of us were working long hours, not spending enough time together. We were going through some developmental problems with my son and tensions in the house were running a little high. I noticed that she was spending a lot more time on her phone texting with her girlfriends. I didn't think much of it. I started making a much more concerted effort to get out of work when I could, help around the house and be more emotionally available. But over the course of a few weeks the gulf just kept getting wider. I ended up accidentally finding some messages when I charged up an old iPad for my son to use. Her FB Messenger was still logged in and there were a lot of highly questionable messages with a guy from her hometown who I will call Jim Bob Cooter or JBC for short. The messages weren't completely inappropriate, but I could tell there were quite a few missing based on the times and context of the messages. I made a mental note to keep an eye on this and went about trying to fix things up. The next day after I took the day off to knock out some projects that I thought would make her happy. And left her some sweet notes reminding her how much I appreciated her. She was once again in the corner of the living room, texting her girlfriends. I took the boy's iPad to the office, opened up FB Messenger and watched in real time as my wife tore me down. Her and JBC were making fun of me. All of my flaws, insecurities and secrets I entrusted to my partner were now fodder for her and JBC. Not only that, but while there wasn't outright sexting, there was a sexual undertone to the whole conversation, especially when she was bashing my performance in the sack. I managed to take some screenshots, but missed a good bit of the messages, because as the conversation was unfolding she was deleting them. I wasn't emotionally capable of confronting her. I stayed in the office until she was asleep and had a couple drinks. I took off the next day and spent some time soul searching, drinking and trying to figure out what to do. The wife came home and wanted to know what was wrong and I just coped out and told her I had a bad day. A couple minutes later I was watching the iPad as the train wreck kept unfolding. So began a couple solid weeks of taking screenshots, drinking and detaching myself from the relationship. I knew there was no going back from this. The messages were now overtly sexual with my wife completely into it, and JBC was sprinkling in, "I love yous." I consulted a lawyer and got my options, and started moving forward. Here's where everything got absolutely surreal. Watching the messages I found out JBC was coming to town to spend a weekend of quality time with my wife in a pretty nice hotel. I was missing a good bit of the info. They must have had a phone conversation about it at some point, but I was able to infer enough to get the when and where. Sure as shit the next day the wife is buttering me up and wanting to take a spa weekend with the girls to relax, and when she gets back we can really focus on our marriage. I go with it all the way. It's the greatest idea she's ever had, and I'll do anything to get us back on track. I get with the lawyer and have him draft a strong separation agreement stating that she would move out, she would get weekend visitation, no child support in the interim until the divorce is final. Then I sit through the most agonizing 2 weeks of my life. After all this, most of my feelings for her are completely gone, and I'm just seething with anger like I've never felt before. D-Day arrives. I take the day off work. I withdraw half of any money in any accounts we are joint on, leave her half alone. I had already redirected my paycheck to a new bank. I close our money market account and get a cashier's check for her half and deposit my half in my new account. I stop at Office Max and print out about 75 pages of FB Messenger screenshots, and I kill time because I don't want to be at home. She texts me that she's taking off and that she loves me. I tell her to have fun. I show up to the hotel at about 8:30 and call the wife's phone from the lobby. It goes straight to VM. They are probably already at it, whatever. I walk up to the front desk and ask if I can use the phone to be connected to JBC's room. It rings 3 times and he picks up. I bounce out of the lobby, and I can hear her start to have a breakdown. I get to the car, drive off to a parking lot and have my own crying rage fit. Previously I would have cried in front of her and yelled and whatnot, but I managed to get my shit together enough to pull it off. I don't know what she did that night or over the weekend. She texted and called over and over wanting to talk. I just turned the phone off, and by the time Monday afternoon rolled around there were movers getting her stuff and she delivered the agreement. I let her have a talk with the kiddos, basically saying mommy and daddy need some time apart, we still love you, etc. etc. standard divorce talk. After a week she wants to have a real talk for the first time. I oblige her because I've already got my shit together and I've got an idea of what I want, but I should hear her out. She's so sorry. She wants another chance. She wants her family back. She'll do anything. She's on her knees crying into my lap. I have no intention of ever taking her back. I tell her she needs to set up marriage counseling on her own at a time that works for me. I tell her that I can't live with her, but she should be around the children to try to maintain a relationship with them. So starts our new normal of her coming over the house, cooking and having dinner with the kids 3 nights a week. Her cleaning the house and doing the kids' laundry, then heading back to her place. We went to counseling. It consisted of her working through her issues with the therapist, trying to figure out why she did it, her begging for forgiveness, and me stoically playing the victim. I was never going to give her another chance. All I wanted to do was kill time, establish myself as the primary caregiver to the kids, and establish her as not having residency in the house. After a few months I go to my own therapist and get diagnosed with depression and PTSD. I ask my work if it's possible to go to part-time for the foreseeable future to deal with personal issues, and it's no big deal. After 6 months of therapy I told her that I couldn't forgive her right now and that I wanted an amicable divorce, but she is still the love of my life and maybe someday we could give it another try. She was devastated, but agreed to the divorce if I promised to try again someday. Once the divorce was filed I needed the kids to want to stay with me. I left a Google search for, "How to Survive Your Wife's Infidelity," up on the shared PC at home, and I left some printed out infidelity articles not so hidden in the kitchen. My daughter found them and came to me crying. I told her she wasn't supposed to find those, that mom made a mistake, that mom still loves her, and that I would always be here for her. My daughter, who used to hold my wife in such high regard, now wouldn't talk to her without screaming, and it crushed her. Not surprisingly, when the court needed statements from the kids a few months later, little brother followed big sister's lead and they both wanted to stay with dad in the house they grew up in. When the divorce was finalized I got the house. I got primary custody of the kids. I got awarded generous child support due to the difference in our incomes due to me working part-time. Now for the last 2 years I've gotten to live in the house with my kids, work part-time. Get the now ex to subsidize it for me, and when she takes the kids over the weekends I get to have my fun with Tinderellas and some FWBs I've cultivated. In the eyes of my kids I'm the patron saint of fatherhood for taking the high road and always being there. In the eyes of my ex I'm the one that got away that she will always pine for. And I get the bonus of having her come over for sex whenever I want it by dangling that carrot of maybe getting back together. But that is never going to happen. AITA for telling my brother's pregnant wife she can give birth in an ally for all I care. So I 30 meters have a 19 meters half brother. He has been living with since he got married in December because my mother and he had falling out due to the fact he got married so young. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. If I knew then what I know now I wouldn't have let them move in. Both him and his wife are the worst house guest I've ever had. I say guest because they're meant to be looking for work in a place of their own. I've made it clear from the get-go it was temporary because of 4 children. Myself and my wife works from home. Since they have moved in they have complained about how loud mornings are in my cooking because I rarely do anything spicy which my brother's wife craves. They're messy and never pick up after themselves, even moan to my wife about never doing their laundry nor making my brother's wife snacks during the day. They think me and my wife are their personal help drivers, then try and guilt us when we tell them no to 4 a.m. McDonald's runs are my brother's wife's rude comments, but hee we are too young to know better. It all came to a head this week when all our children were at home due to a bug going around. Nothing bad, just schools, daycare in our area are extra careful. I couldn't get the day off, so unfortunately my wife had to deal with 6 children while trying to work. My father and his wife demanded they all stay in one room and we get them takeout so there's no germs near their food. When my wife told them they should cook for once because she is extremely busy, they filled out calling her a heartless for making a 5-month pregnant woman cook for 8 people and my brother clean while he was trying to sort out business. It got to the point of them screaming at my wife and my kids crying. My wife had an anxiety attack. I rushed home when I got So's text, but my brother was waiting at the door crying about not being our slave and how his pregnant wife is starving. When I got to my wife's office and she explained everything I saw read, I told them they had 30 days to get out of my house and it was time they faced the real world. They both tried to argue with me, explaining none of them can drive and my brother still hasn't got a job. I said I didn't care. My brother's wife said that they'd end up homeless and if anything happened to my niece it was all my fault. I told basically what the title says and she started crying, calling me a heartless asshole. I explained my situation to my sister and she called me a bad bastard for being so heartless to 2 teenagers, but I asked her when she was letting them move and she hung up. I've had multiple social media posts made about me and anger phone calls from since then from my sister's husband and my brother's friends. So my brother and his wife have been kicked out as of 1 hour ago. My sister-in-law told me this morning she'd make the next 30 days hell on earth for us and blasted music when the baby was sleeping. Put on horror movies on the family TV while my kids were in the room. Messed up both the bathrooms, even left the tubs full, then made a ton of food without eating much of it or cleaning up. They were extremely rude and went out of their way to insult my wife and children, thinking I had to legally let them stay the 30 days when I don't. So you can imagine their faces when I started throwing their stuff into the front garden. They threatened to call the police when that didn't work and they knew I wasn't backing down. The tears and begging started. My brother even had the nerve to demand money for 3 months' rent and a deposit for their own apartment. I told them fuck off and my wife told them to go over to my sister's house, she will help them. They ended begging for hotel, food money, but I told them kick rocks and if they weren't off my property in 20 minutes I was calling the police. I don't know where they're now, but judging by the amount of times my sister has rang me, they're probably at her house. I've also changed my voicemail to, if you're mad I kicked out bother and still you take them in or give them money if you won't or can't shut the fuck up.